Has everyone seen Turning Red? It's a great movie. It has heart and a great sense of humor. I have at least 3 other animated film reviews in the works, but I wanted to get to Turning Red first because we're now in the month of May. I'll be honest, I was not super stoked for this film after the first trailer dropped. But I also wasn't excited by the trailers for Luca, and Luca has become one of my favorite Pixar films ever. It's a shame neither of these got a theatrical release. Both of them would have looked amazing on the big screen. But yeah, I wasn't expecting to love Luca as much as I did, just like I wasn't expecting to love Turning Red as much as I did. I'm really digging the cartoony style of both films. It helps the animators push the characters' expressiveness, which especially helps in the case of Turning Red's comedy. This might be the most I've ever laughed at a Pixar film. Turning Red makes great use of its setting and lighting to create some stunning visuals. And May's panda form is so adorable. I've said it over and over again, but I love character-driven stories, and Turning Red's characters are so endearing. I love May and her family and friends. Miriam is best girl.
What's with her?
What's with your face?
And yeah, I have a weakness for the color-coded character trope, so I really loved how everyone in May's friend group has a signature color. The cast is amazing. Just like with Luca, I was especially impressed with the younger voice talent. Of May's friend group, only one of them is voiced by an adult, Abby, who's voiced by Pixar artist Hyun Park. But I never would have guessed. She fits in perfectly with the younger cast, and she just exudes that feral gremlin energy. Also, I think it's a rule at this point that every American animated property making a Chinese-based production has to cast James Hong. I definitely related a lot to May. I was about May's age during the time the film is set, so looking at the early 2000s from the point of view of an adolescent girl was very familiar in a lot of ways. I was a shy, studious kid who spent more time on my schoolwork than on socializing. And I also played the flute in high school. I kind of wish we had seen her play it more, but I do appreciate that awesome jazz solo in the intro. My parents were never quite as overbearing, but I did put a lot of pressure on myself to do well in school and get good grades. A big part of growing up was me coming to terms with the fact that I couldn't be perfect all the time, and that's not a good or healthy thing to try to be. I considered all my friends to be way cooler than me, and they pushed me to do things outside of my comfort zone. Even making new friends at that time was difficult for me. I met my best friend in 5th grade because on the first day of school she wore a Pikachu shirt to class, and I had to work up the courage to tell her I liked it. And she became my best friend all through high school. A lot of my memories of growing up and making new friends are tied to all the nostalgic bombs throughout the film. Those boy bands were the soundtrack of my childhood, so yeah, a coming-of-age story set to that kind of music certainly resonated with me. I love that shot at the concert of May glancing at her friends while they all rush the stage together. Because being into a thing, whether it's a boy band or a popular anime, is often not so much about being into the thing itself, as it is about enjoying it with other people. This is not to say that the film is perfect. The dialogue is a bit stilted at times. In particular, the confrontation between Ming and Devon at the Daisy Mart seemed a little forced. This just didn't feel like an authentic exchange. Maybe if Ming had accused Devon of putting ideas in May's head as opposed to accusing him of actually doing anything to May. To me, some of Ming's dialogue sounded like her trying to backpedal without outright admitting she may have been wrong. And then there's this line at the end.
My panda, my choice, Mom.
Yeah, I know the idea of body autonomy is a theme in the film, with May ultimately standing up and making her own choice regarding keeping the panda spirit. I just think that particular line seemed a bit on the nose, maybe. Like, in the moment, that very particular word choice doesn't feel natural. Which is a shame, because most of the dialogue feels very natural, especially from the kids.
What's with your face?
But I think the biggest strike against the film is that it suffers from some tone problems, most notably in the Daisy Mart scene and the climax. I get that Ming confronting Devon at the Daisy Mart needed to be this hugely embarrassing moment for May, because it's what triggers her first panda transformation. But it does feel a bit contrived in how over the top it is. That Ming would actually go to the Daisy Mart in person with May in tow and be completely oblivious to the fact that Devon has absolutely no idea what's going on, it just feels a little bit unnatural. There's a disconnect between the stakes and what's actually happening on screen. And the climax has the same problem. Ming's kaiju-sized panda form was so huge so that the climax itself would feel appropriately huge, but the danger she poses is at odds with the more lighthearted tone of the scene overall. There's no way that absolutely none of the kids there were crushed by either Ming herself or falling debris. And I don't mind that the film doesn't go there. Turning Red is not at its core a dark narrative. I did not need the collateral damage at the concert to be a source of angst. It just makes the climax a bit bumpier than it could have been. I thought that the climax wasn't effective, far from it. It's a fun action scene with some genuine emotion behind it and striking visuals. I love that what ultimately completes the ritual is Four Town joining May's aunties in singing. It's a perfect encapsulation of the film's message that what saves the day is a blending of old and new, tradition and modernity, a balance between honoring your past and forging your own future. May needs both her friends and her family working together to save her mom, and the Cantonese chant combined with Nobody Like You sounds amazing. Turning Red is an important step forward for Pixar and for American animation in general when it comes to cultural representation, letting the people actually from that culture tell the story. Yeah, that's an exceptionally low bar to clear, but that's where we are in the industry. And it makes a difference. Director Domi Shi drew on her real-life experiences of growing up as a Chinese Canadian in the early 2000s, which made the film feel as authentic as it does. Unfortunately, the film has come under fire for just that authenticity. There have been many complaints that the setting of Turning Red is too niche, with Cinema Blend reviewer Sean O'Connell infamously stating, "If you are in it, this might work very well for you. I am not in it. This was exhausting." Fortunately, other critics lobbied right back that Turning Red's core themes of growing up are universal, that even if you're not Chinese or you were never a teenage girl, everyone experiences the growing pains portrayed in this movie. Everyone struggles to figure out who they are at that age. Every teenager butts heads with their parents. I love this review's response in particular, pointing out the shallow nature of that criticism specifically in relation to other Pixar films, joking that Ratatouille was brave for setting the film in the rat community of the sewers of Paris. That response perfectly highlights the narrow thinking of this kind of criticism. Monsters, bugs, rats, and sentient cars are apparently all more relatable than other humans. White male audiences can see themselves in an adolescent boy who can turn into a sea monster, but not an adolescent girl who can turn into a giant red panda. But why should seeing yourself in the characters be the ultimate goal of consuming media anyway? Good movies are all about telling good stories, and the fun of good stories comes from seeing the world through another person's perspective, from getting to learn about and experience things you may not have otherwise. O'Connell did later apologize and express gratitude for the criticism of his post, but he was far from the only one to criticize the film for its narrow appeal, and the fact that particular criticism was so widespread just proves exactly why we need creators like Domi Shi and films like Turning Red. The sheer fact that talking about periods was considered inappropriate for a film about teenage girls astonishes me. I see we haven't gotten over this idea in America that animation is either fairy tales for babies or crude humor for adults and nothing in between. It's kind of subtle, but there's an implication that Ming and Jin both split all the housework equally, as they're both shown cooking and both running the family business at various points in the film. And then there's this little moment that the LGBTQ fanbase lit up for. No, it's not much in the grand scheme of things, but the film's creators made it very clear they were aiming for a queer reading of that scene. Now, the hypocrisy of Disney's rainbow vomit merchandise versus its roadblocking of substantial queer representation in its films, that's another topic for another time. For as groundbreaking as it was, Turning Red did continue Pixar's fine tradition of delivering honest, heartwarming stories with that one scene designed to make you bawl your eyes out. Pixar films have also been notable for crafting stories where there are no real villains, as well as depicting parents as people. It's obvious that Ming genuinely loves and cares about May, despite her helicopter parenting, but the film pulls no punches in showing the disconnect between what Ming thinks is best for May and how her actions are affecting her daughter. It's notable that Ming reassures May that they'll get through this together, But in the next scene, May is alone in her room, empty of everything except her mattress and a single stuffed animal, overhearing her mother talking about how upset she is that May has started transforming. Ming might have thought she was protecting her daughter, but it only further fed into May's despair that she was turning into something wrong and horrible. What she really needed was comfort and support, which is exactly what her friends give her the next day. And the scene where May reconciles with her mother in the astral plane is poignant and sweet. There's something very touching about seeing May offer her mother the same support Ming has offered her throughout the film. In that moment, May breaks the chain of generational trauma, reassuring her mother that she is good enough, and facilitating a reconciling between Ming and her own mother. Ludwig Göransson wrote an amazing leitmotif called Family that reprises in this moment. It's a simple, beautiful melody that's achingly bittersweet. It almost feels like nostalgia for a time you could never go back to, which perfectly fits with the movie's theme of the changes that come with growing up. But the one scene that really got to me was May's talk with her father. This was the moment that reduced me to uncontrollable sobbing. In 2015, I was diagnosed with OCD. That was an incredibly difficult time for me. For a long time, I viewed my OCD as this horrible curse that I would cut away from myself if I could. It took me years and a lot of therapy to come to terms with my OCD as a part of myself. I still struggle with it, but I'm much better at not fighting the disease, but living with it. And learning to live with it, and the anxiety and depression that often come with it, accepting these parts of myself instead of trying to suppress them, has made my life so much easier. It's no accident that when May decides to embrace the panda spirit, she doesn't just remember the good times with the panda, but everything. She remembers the fun times with her friends, but also when she lost control and attacked Tyler, as well as how scared she was when she first transformed. Life is messy. People make mistakes, they do bad things, they have regrets. Accepting yourself for who you are, all of who you are, not just the parts that are easy to love, is such a powerful message. And I do love the significance of Ming's panda spirit ending up in May's Tamagotchi. That even if she couldn't fully embrace her panda side, it's now something she actively cares for as opposed to something she's actively repressing. Change takes time. Everyone should have the freedom to choose who they want to be. Learning to accept yourself, all parts of yourself, can be hard and a little scary, but the end result is worth the effort. Let me know what you thought of Turning Red in the comments below. And if you had the ability to turn into a giant red panda, do you think you would keep it? Thanks again for watching, and as always, I'm eternally optimistic, and I'll catch you guys next time. Pixar films have also been noticeable... Blah, blah, blah. Pixar films have also been noticeable... Blah.